It happened so fast that the entire departure terminal fell silent. A decorated single father in a pilot's uniform was surrounded by airport security, his flight bag pulled from his shoulder as stunned passengers watched in disbelief. Then something no one expected happened. One after another, 40 wounded military veterans slowly rose from their seats. Some leaned on canes, some wore prosthetic legs, some carried scars no one could see, but every one of them made the same choice. They refused to board the aircraft unless the man being escorted away was allowed back into the cockpit. In that unforgettable moment, one executive decision collided with 40 stories of survival, loyalty, and gratitude that could never be erased. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives, forgiveness is stronger than pride, hope should never be abandoned, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community. Every morning before sunrise painted the sky with soft gold, Colton Reeves followed the same routine. He packed lunch for his 9-year-old daughter, Hazel, braided her hair as neatly as he could after years of practice, laughed through her endless jokes about his uneven braids, and walked her to the school bus before reporting for duty at Westbridge Regional Airport. Since losing his wife, Evelyn, to an aggressive illness 5 years earlier, every day had been a balancing act between grief, responsibility, and quiet determination. Flying had once been a dream they shared together. After she was gone, it became the promise he kept alive for both of them. Passengers rarely knew anything about the calm pilot welcoming them aboard. They saw confidence, professionalism, and a reassuring smile. They never saw the sleepless nights helping Hazel through nightmares or the extra volunteer hours Colton spent transporting injured veterans to rehabilitation centers without asking for recognition. He believed every person carried invisible battles, and if he could lighten someone's burden, even for a moment, then his own pain somehow became easier to carry. That particular afternoon, the airport buzzed with unusual activity. A charter flight had been arranged for 40 wounded veterans traveling to a national recovery retreat. Many had survived explosions, crashes, and battlefield injuries. Some were attending because they had finally gathered enough courage to leave their homes after years of isolation. Others hoped the retreat would reconnect them with families who no longer knew how to reach them emotionally. Colton had personally requested the assignment because he had flown many of these men before. He knew their names, remembered their stories, and treated each of them with quiet dignity instead of sympathy. The airport's newly appointed chief executive officer, Meredith Caldwell, had arrived earlier that day with ambitious plans and little patience. She had built her reputation by demanding absolute efficiency, reducing costs, and eliminating anything she viewed as unnecessary sentiment. She believed airports should function like machines, where emotions complicated business. During a tour of the terminal, she noticed Colton helping one veteran carefully adjust a prosthetic leg before boarding. Minutes later, he carried another passenger's heavy medical equipment without being asked. To Meredith, the schedule mattered more than personal gestures. Seeing a pilot away from his cockpit delayed the boarding timeline by several minutes. Without learning the reason, she concluded he lacked discipline. Determined to establish authority on her first day, she instructed airport security to remove the pilot from duty pending an investigation into unprofessional conduct. The order spread through the terminal before anyone understood what was happening. Colton never argued. He quietly handed over his identification badge and apologized to the passengers for the inconvenience, even though he had done nothing wrong. His greatest fear was not losing his position. It was disappointing Hazel, who proudly told everyone at school her father helped people fly safely every day. As security escorted him away, the first veteran slowly stood. His name was Graham Mercer, a former rescue medic whose left leg had been replaced after an explosion overseas. He steadied himself on aluminum crutches and looked toward the boarding bridge with tears gathering in his eyes. A second veteran rose beside him. Then another. Within seconds, all 40 wounded men had left their seats. Some struggled to stand upright, some could barely walk. Not one of them moved toward the airplane. Airport staff stared in confusion, families waiting nearby fell silent. News crews covering the CEO's first public appearance instinctively turned their cameras toward the growing crowd. the veterans never shouted, they simply refused to move. Every face carried the same quiet resolve. The delay stretched from minutes into nearly an hour. Meredith demanded an explanation. The answer arrived not through confrontation but through memories. One veteran explained that years earlier, after returning home with severe anxiety, he had nearly abandoned air travel forever until Colton patiently stayed beside him before every takeoff, helping him breathe through panic attacks without making him feel embarrassed. Another remembered collapsing inside an airport after a painful rehabilitation session. Colton had missed his own lunch break to remain with him until medical staff arrived, refusing any thanks. A third recalled bringing his young son aboard after years of emotional distance. Colton had quietly invited the frightened boy to visit the cockpit before departure, giving father and son their first genuine smile together in months. Story after story emerged. No one had ever asked Colton to do those things. No company policy required them. He simply believed people deserved compassion. As television cameras continued recording, Meredith realized she knew everything about operational statistics but almost nothing about the people who made those numbers meaningful. Then Graham carefully removed a worn photograph from his wallet. It showed him smiling beside Colton after completing his first flight since losing his leg. On the back, written in faded ink, were simple words. Your scars prove you survived. Never let them convince you that you stopped living. Every veteran carried something similar. A handwritten note. A hospital visitor badge. A boarding pass signed with encouragement. A photograph, each memory traced back to the same quiet pilot. Meanwhile, Colton remained seated inside a nearby security office, unaware of what was happening outside. His thoughts stayed fixed on Hazel. He wondered how he would explain losing his job. He worried about mortgage payments, school expenses, and the promise he had made to never let grief define their future. An elderly airport janitor who had known Colton for years gently smiled and offered him a cup of coffee. The old man admitted he had watched thousands of employees come and go, yet none had treated every cleaner, mechanic, baggage handler, and passenger with equal respect the way Colton always had. Outside, passengers from unrelated flights began applauding the veteran's peaceful stand, social media filled with videos showing wounded men refusing to fly without the pilot who had helped restore pieces of their lives. Within hours, millions had viewed the footage, but the most important transformation happened where no camera could truly capture it. Meredith walked alone through the terminal, reading letters displayed by the veterans. One described how Colton attended a memorial service for a soldier he had never met because no family members could arrive in time. Another revealed he secretly paid hotel costs for a veteran stranded during a medical emergency. Another thanked him for reminding someone who felt broken that being needed was stronger than feeling damaged. None of these acts had been reported to management, none appeared in employee evaluations. Kindness had left no paperwork, only changed lives. For the first time in years, Meredith questioned the leadership philosophy that had built her career. She remembered her own father, a firefighter who often came home exhausted but insisted that success was measured by people, not profits. Somewhere along the journey to becoming a celebrated executive, she had forgotten that lesson. Without another word, she walked directly into the security office. Colton stood respectfully as she entered. His face showed disappointment but no anger. That surprised her even more. Instead of defending himself, he apologized for causing operational delays. The apology broke something inside Meredith that pride had protected for far too long. She realized the delay had never been caused by compassion. It had been caused by her inability to recognize it. She personally returned his pilot's wings, then she accompanied him back toward the aircraft. As the terminal doors opened, applause erupted so loudly that conversations across the airport stopped. The 40 veterans remained exactly where they had promised, waiting. The moment they saw Colton walking freely again, many wiped away tears, some embraced him carefully, others simply nodded with quiet gratitude that needed no words. Even airport employees who barely knew him found themselves applauding. The boarding process finally resumed, but something profound had changed. The flight was no longer just transportation. It had become proof that genuine character inspires loyalty no authority can command. Meredith asked permission to address everyone gathered in the terminal. She admitted publicly that she had judged a man by a schedule instead of his heart. She acknowledged that leadership without humility eventually loses sight of humanity. Her apology was sincere because it carried the weight of personal change rather than public image. The veterans accepted her apology with grace. Colton accepted it with the same kindness he had always offered others. Forgiveness came naturally because bitterness had never guided his life. As the aircraft prepared for departure under bright afternoon skies, Hazel arrived unexpectedly with her teacher, who had seen the news and driven her to the airport after school. She ran toward her father with joyful tears, wrapping her arms around him before he climbed the boarding stairs. Watching them embrace reminded everyone that the strongest people are often those carrying the heaviest burdens with the gentlest hearts. The flight lifted smoothly into the clear blue sky. Inside the cabin, conversations felt lighter, old fears seemed smaller, hope traveled with every passenger. Months later, Meredith introduced new leadership programs emphasizing empathy alongside performance. Employee volunteer efforts expanded dramatically. Customer satisfaction reached record levels, not because new technology had been installed, but because compassion became part of the airport's culture. Colton continued flying. He continued raising Hazel. He continued helping strangers whose names he might never remember but whose lives might forever remember him. He never considered himself extraordinary. He simply believed every person deserved to feel seen. The 40 veterans remained close friends, gathering every year for the same retreat. They often joked that the most important flight they ever took was the one they almost refused to board because standing together reminded them they still had voices worth hearing. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us what you believe is the greatest strength: kindness, forgiveness, courage, or loyalty, and share why that lesson matters in your own life. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Sometimes the strongest leaders wear expensive suits, and sometimes they wear a pilot's uniform carrying an old lunch bag packed for a little daughter waiting at home. Titles can command attention, but only compassion earns lasting respect. Long after applause fades and headlines disappear, people rarely remember who held the highest position. They remember the person who stayed beside them when life became unbearable, who offered hope without expecting anything in return, and who quietly proved that even in a world rushing toward the next destination, the greatest journey will always be from the mind to the heart.